The question about MSMEs, are they facing tighter liquidity conditions? I think traditionally there's always been some discomfort around availability of credit, especially for MSMEs. But if you really ask, in the current state of geopolitical crisis, the credit providers have stayed very steady. So we are not really seeing any disruption in the flow of credit to the MSMEs. The requirement of MSMEs for higher credit may have gone up definitely, because they've been sort of facing headwinds in the form of various geopolitical events, be it the US tariff action, subsequently, in terms of the Middle East crisis, and now of course elongated logistic requirement because of the stoppage of certain routes and all that. So as EXIM Bank, we're trying to see how well we can sort of ensure that the credit flow to the MSMEs continues. I think the entire banking setup is also trying to do it, also with the assistance of Government of India, because various schemes which have been sort of announced by the Government of India since the time of the US tariff action, which was undertaken in the form of credit guarantee scheme at that time. Subsequently, we are also seeing now ECLGS 5.0, which is meant to ease the liquidity crunch of the MSME sectors. Also, when we look at certain sectors, of course, sectors which are dependent on energy, because we've of course got an oil shock because of the Middle East disruption. So there, the sectors which are dependent on oil and energy, we are seeing, because there's an increase in the input cost for them, and also in terms of their profitability or viability of the sector in which they perform.
We have seen government or from you guys for additional support apart from what you guys have already said there.
So if I can say, it's a very fluid situation. I think the response will be there. So the environment is very fluid, and the challenges are very different. And depending on the challenges faced, I'm sure the response will be there. Currently, when we look at MSME again, they have problems with accessing credit, and the cost of credit is very high, and a requirement of collateral. Typically, MSMEs are not very asset rich, so they may not have the they may not have the withhold to provide security for the liquidity or funding which they want. So when we look at all the three constraints which become an access barrier for the MSMEs, be it the cost of funds, which again is being addressed through the interest subvention, which is now being extended also to factoring instruments, because earlier days only pre-shipment and post-shipment credit there was an interest subvention. Now for the factoring transactions also we are getting interest subvention. So I would say the cost of funding has been reduced. The second part is in terms of the collateral. So again, the government is stepping in. For example, as EXIM Bank, we also encourage Indian companies, especially MSMEs, to look at newer markets, because sometimes we feel there's a saturation in the developed markets or traditional markets. And for the newer markets, the comfort which the MSMEs or other corporates want is in terms of a security of their money coming back, for the goods. So there at EXIM Bank, we actually provide trade finance facilities, and where we are guaranteeing the LCs issued by the importers bank. So, when we look at collateral free, again factoring I would say is the best instrument, because under factoring you don't really need to post any collateral. So I would say that most of the requirements of the MSMEs, now the quantum is adequate or not, I think we need to look at the situation as it evolves, because right now I think it's too early days for me to give a conclusion of the schemes or what needs to be done more.
How much time do you
So the question also depends. See, I think our MSMEs are very resilient. We would say that our economy itself has been resilient. When we looked at maybe February or Jan-Feb, when the entire issue started, there was lots of concerns around growth. There were lots of concerns around our credit rating also. But if you see one by one, each of them have come forward and affirmed, So for example, our GDP growth rates are not really getting too disturbed. We also very recently, some of the international rating agencies have spoken about there's no requirement for any downgrade. So I think everybody is expressing their confidence in the whole system in which we have been able to. So I think that sort of also underlines the resilient nature of our MSMEs, because again, I don't want to get into numbers, but almost 50% of our merchandise exports we say is contributed by the MSMEs. So I think the resilience is there, and I think going forward, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very fluid situation. But as and when any need arises, maybe it a sector specific also for that matter, I think we should be able to find a solution.
Is EXIM Bank portal?
Yeah, sure. So that's another thing which we've been discussing. EXIM Bank traditionally has been providing support to the project exporters. Under our trade assistance program, as also under our factoring services, we are of course looking at MSMEs in a new way. We are also looking at a very standard product which is otherwise also rolled out by all the public sector banks as well as the other institutions, where it becomes easier for the MSMEs to fill their forms and request for loans.